Good evening, everyone. Good evening, ma'am. It is my
Tasneem, you can call me Aparna.
Please, ma'am. I think I'll restrain myself from calling you that. I'll call you ma'am because of.
Okay, let's carry on.
Great. So, first of all, I'd like to say it's my absolute pleasure to moderate today's interaction with our esteemed guest, Ms Aparna Mittal. Before I introduce her, I would request you all once again to put yourself on mute and keep your cameras turned off. You may keep posting questions that you may have in the chat box, and we'll be taking them up in the last 15-20 minutes. So we have here with us today Ms Aparna Mittal. She's the founder of Samāna Center for Gender Policy and Law. I'm personally very interested and very excited about this interaction, as I have recently interned under Ms Aparna, and let me tell you all, that was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I'll just tell you something about her. She's graduated from NLSIU Bangalore in 2005, and she's registered with the Bar Council of New Delhi in 2005 itself. Prior to founding Samāna, she was partner with India's leading corporate law firms, AZB Partners and Luthra Law Offices. With over 16 years of professional experience, her industry knowledge and expertise span a diverse range of sectors, including hospitality, IT, telecom, labor and employment, etc. Ma'am, first of all, welcome you all, and we are really excited to have you.
Thank you, Tasneem. It was wonderful working with you when you were interning with us, and it's a great opportunity for me to reconnect with the batch at BMU and with you as well.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So we'll be talking about several things, but whenever I interact with anyone who's from law, and the first question that comes to my mind, that why did you choose law? Like, there's so many fields out there, and was law your first preference, or was it just because chalo kuch nahi hai to law karte hain?
So actually, that's a question I ask myself many times. Every time I look back, I think I was in class 5, and I grew up in a very small city called Kanpur. I found I was the only person who probably knew the library well in that city. And in one corner of the library, I found a book which nobody had opened that shelf for almost 5 years. And there was very little internet connectivity in those years. I'm talking about the early 80s or mid 80s. And I found a book which had one corner, 2-inch by 2-inch piece about National Law School of India University. Nobody had heard of NLS. There was hardly any internet. And I remember badgering my teacher to let me take that book home. And it was one of those shelves you could never borrow books from. It was for older children. I was probably in class 4 or 5. And I went home and I said, I want to go here. And I just don't know. I always wanted to be a lawyer. And at some point, I think now that probably, and I don't want to sound cliched, but from the time I remember wanting to do something professionally, I always wanted to do it. And things just, then when I was in class 8, class 10, I forgot about that little cutting I had from the library. But later, when I was, I think, in class 12, I was very clear. In fact, not many people know. I actually dropped a year after class 12 because in those times with very little connectivity, I just could not find out enough about NLS. And I didn't even know about other law schools, etc. I couldn't make it for the entrance in time because I just couldn't enroll for the entrance in time. I actually just dropped a year. I enrolled in some local college for a course which actually taught nothing because I was just always very clear I wanted to do law, and this is how I wanted to do law. And I'm just grateful to many things that things panned out in that manner.
Right. So talking about NLSIU, which is one of the premier law schools in India, how do you think that a law school shapes or molds your personality? Like, there are several activities other than studies as well, like moot courts, legal aid, legal writing. So how do being at law school changes and molds
so this is not just about NLS Bangalore. This is about any law school. So what I really loved about law school is, one, just the diversity of people you met. And I personally always believe this, that your learnings are not purely academic learnings in life. You learn from every situation you put yourself into, every person you interact with is a new learning. And learning in itself is a multidisciplinary or multidimensional aspect. You can't just always learn from a book. So what I really loved about law school, and it was a long time, it was 5 years there, there were just so many avenues and opportunities for you to try out, and you would do some things and just hate them, you didn't like doing them at all, or you would do something which you really loved and you wanted to do more of it, or you also found areas which you wanted to do but there were no opportunities, so you could create those opportunities. So what I really loved about law school was and we are all very young when we're in law school, right? I mean, from maybe 18 years, 16 years to 21. Those are formative parts of your life in some way. You are discovering your own sets of values, what you really like doing, what really bores you, what is the kind of friend circle do you have. I just thought that law school created that enabling environment where you could try out multiple kinds of things and everything added to your personality. And I also think that more than a formal structure of education, the fact that you had so many people, you wanted to talk about Kafka, you will find two people in the quadrangle who will be experts on Kafka and you can talk to them. You want to talk about the best dance form that has come out in the world, you will find two people practicing somewhere in that exact dance form. And just for me, that was just an eye opener. You could learn whatever you wanted to, and nobody judged you, right? Even if you didn't perform well, one music concert, you don't perform well, it was okay, because the focus was on learning and the focus was in discovering your own skills rather than just getting a particular grade on your CGPA or on your report card.
Right. So you do believe that, a practical experience of learning is very much important at law school specifically, because when we go out and there's so much more to more than just studies and more than just, cases and sections. So what is your experience?
Sorry, just to add to that, Tasneem, I think why is law different? Because law comes from the society we live in, irrespective of the format of law that you choose to practice, whether you become a corporate lawyer, you join the development sector, or you go work in-house. The day-to-day situations that will come to you for you to step in and resolve, they come from people around us. They come from situations around us. So the more knowledge that you have, the more connected you are to the reality of life, the more that you have engaged with people and situations, I think it enriches you as a lawyer, because in your mind you have a reference point. You have seen a situation and you know how to act in that situation. So the learning, I think, really comes from the fact that law is an approach which helps you solve many problems. And the more you interact, the more you are closer to problems and situations that you see.
That's absolutely what I was meaning to talk about. Thank you, ma'am. And there's something very interesting that we found out about you, and which I really want you to ask is, you've been in the corporate for a long time. You've worked with leading law firms, whether that's AZB or whether that's Luthra and Luthra. And when you were at the peak of your career, when over 10, 12 years experience in corporate law, then you suddenly quit it and you set that aside and start your own consultancy firm at Samāna. So was that difficult decision, or what happened that time?
Right. So I think we have to step back a little. I loved what I did at a corporate law because I always, and I don't want to sound arrogant, etc., but I always had a vision for myself. I was not driven by the next billable hour. I was not driven by particular revenue targets. While it's important to be financially independent, and nobody can underplay how important it is to have savings and to have a financial outlay in mind, I was never driven by that. So my focus always was on my own skills. Am I getting better? Is somebody from across the globe coming to me because I'm the best lawyer in this world for this kind of practice? So I always had a very high standard for myself, and those standards had more things to do than the thresholds of performance an organization would bring to you. So it wasn't just about the target. It wasn't just about one client transaction. I always wanted to do more. So I think once I had become partner, and I was partner for about 4.5, 5 years, the monotony just started getting to me. And I thought that while I was working on intellectually very stimulating transactions, I had a very good team to work with. And there was a lot of day-to-day technical learning. At some level, I thought I was not growing. I was not learning new skills. And because I personally always believed in, learning to be multidimensional, I somehow found that when you are at the peak of your career, and you use that phrase, uh, that kind of stops you or makes you scared from exploring your potential. You're so used to a particular designation, you're so used to a particular amount of remuneration, so your world becomes more and more myopic. This is your world and there can be nothing beyond it. And I also thought that in spite of working in the best places or working on the best matters with good clients, I thought my worldview or the people I was interacting with, their worldview was more and more limited. If every time I picked up the phone and I spoke to somebody and they were talking about targets or they were talking about what new deal are you doing, it really bored me because I didn't think that there was anything refreshing. So I decided to take a break. It was not easy. It's not easy to give up what you have built with sheer hard work over 12, 13 years. But I think I always had that belief that skills are transferable. It's not just skills in a particular area. In fact, now if you look at all the discussions about future of work, about how people from very different sectors move to different sectors, I somehow had a very strong sense that, the learnings that I had from 13 years, and the learnings are not just about corporate law. It's about how do you work on documents, how do you collect information, how do you put it in a form which is palatable to the people you're advising, how do you research on an area and get to the bottom of the issue, how do you work with stakeholders who have completely different requirements or needs and bring them to the same point. It could be a development sector issue, it could be a negotiating with the government for transgender rights, or it could be negotiating a multi-billion-dollar M&A transaction. The fundamental skills of integrity, of hard work, of research, of culling out the main issue and doing the pros and cons, and then eliminating the worst case situation and coming to the best win-win situation. I thought those skills could work in any sector. So I just took the plunge and just went ahead. I didn't know how it would go when I started 3 years ago, but I just thought that, and this is something I really want to say to all law students, that the beauty about law or law practice is that your hard work and your integrity can get you anywhere. You don't have to be the oldest person in the room. You don't have to be the most experienced person, given number of years, to be the person who knows that area the best. The better you read, the more you're relying on primary resources of research, the more you make your own opinion about what you're reading and what the view should have been. If you can invest that time in law school to find your view on things and why you believe something should be in a particular manner, it could be an ideological issue, it could be a legal issue. I think there is nothing better than that, because that gives you that confidence that even if 99 people are saying something different, you still know why you are taking a particular view. You could be wrong, you could be right, you could come up with the most unique proposition in the world that nobody has thought of. But you're relying on your own thinking. You have put that hard work and that intellectual labor into what you do. And I think that one skill, if you have that, it will give you the confidence for the next 30, 40, 50 years of your life. Because you're not relying on somebody else telling you, this is the right view. People may guide you in terms of how to do something better. People will always have opinions here. And many a times, and I know I've mentioned this to Professor Nigam, a lot of times, the fundamental principles he taught us on taxation law, and I somehow really loved indirect tax. In the middle of corporate law practice, there would be a senior partner from a different, big four consultancy. I was 3 years in the profession. I could correct them, pardon my using that word, but I could correct them on fundamental principles of taxation because I knew the fundamentals. When you know that, tax incidents can be passed on to somebody else, what is deemed manufacturing, if you just understand, if you have your own understanding of the principles, it does not matter who you're talking to. You will learn, you will improvise, but you have that surety that what you know is coming directly from what the logical process has been provided in the law. And if that's something each one of you can focus on, it's not about shortcuts. It's not about that one document you have to make for a presentation or for a viva, if you have that feeling in your mind that once I have read this Ware Act or this statute or this proposition, I should be able to know everything about it. You know, so a lot of times, and I think Tasneem, I would have troubled you as well, when you're researching on a point of law, I used to always read the Ware Act cover to cover. So it wasn't about just that one section. It was just about, do you really know the scheme of things on why the statute came up? Do you know the whole framework? And a lot of times what may look like, why am I reading this right now? I should just look at that one section. I think it's important because that collective information that you garner from reading, it will help you in so many ways that you won't even realize. And end of 5 years, you realize that your mind is no different from a library. You know exactly what is in what statute, what are the nuances between different statutes, what is the interplay of statutes, what were the different, because practice of law is not easy. You will not get simple situations. You will more and more get complex situations, unprecedented situations. So the more you're clear in your own mind about fundamentals or why something is being provided in the law, you will really be fascinated with how easily you can come up with a view. And you can be very sure about how the law should be in an unprecedented scenario. And I personally found that fascinating, especially when I did, M&A transactions, really complex cross-border transactions. There was a lot of structuring to do. You were very sure you didn't want to do anything which was not in line with the law. But in a lot of places, the law was silent. The law came about 100 years ago, and corporate transactions were very, very new in terms of the kind of scenarios they wanted to address. So how can you be guided by those fundamental principles and create a robust framework for clients without compromising ethics or legality, but yet be very sure that tomorrow if this goes into litigation, I can justify why, on the basis of everything I have read or done or seen, I can justify a particular stand. And if you can get to that point of practice of law, where you can preempt a situation and say this is how the law should be, and it only comes from your own reading, you will really, really enjoy the practice of law, because you won't be doing it because somebody else has asked you to do it. You'll be doing it because that process in your mind will be just so fascinating that that's the thrill that we look for as.
So according to you, like, this thrill can be found in any area of
Absolutely.
any area of practice.
And I'm sure this thrill is there in economics and accounting and other practices as well. But
Right.
I only know law. So I really think that when you reach that point that you are very confident because you have read enough and you have worked out the permutations, because law is about permutations and combinations, right? I mean, you keep changing the fact and the situation, you keep changing the situation and the response keeps changing. But you also can't have contradictory advice. That you have to have that cogent reason why with every change of fact, whether you changed your advice or didn't change your advice. And when you start doing that logicality of it, right, that's when the fundamentals are so clear in your mind that you have that confidence that you can handle this or apply these principles to any kind of situation that comes into it.
Right. So I'm assuming that this is the thrill, that led you find Samāna and, establish it.
Yes, it wasn't a thrill. I mean, I sometimes miss the thrill, that really complex work that I used to do. But I think it was more than that, it was the confidence. One that, you don't need a third party validation to do something. If you are confident about your own skills, if you know that I have read up enough and I can, because as I said, hard work and vision and integrity can get you anywhere. I personally am a very, very big believer of that. That when you work hard, you work with a good conscience, you are not taking shortcuts, you will find light at the end of the tunnel. I am a very, very strong believer of that. So when I started Samāna, I said, look, it's a new area. Of course, there will be people who've been doing this for 5 years ahead of me. Actually, what Samāna does, it's a niche area. Not many people practice this kind of law. In fact, if I were to, when I started, in fact, a lot of people were laughing at me. A lot of people said, you've left your job. This is really, a stupid decision to take. But there was something in my mind that said, even if it is stupid, let me try it out, right? Because I was not bound in my head to say that I have to do X number of things by this age. I could do whatever I wanted to do. And because I had always worked in a law firm, I had practiced corporate law, I knew that if this doesn't work out, I can always go back to that. Because I really think that in life you have to explore. You can't have a unidimensional linear curve. You can't, I mean, that was my thinking, that, you just get really bored. If you don't take calculated risks, if something is becoming monotonous and you don't explore, how will you discover your own potential? It's surprising. I don't know how many of you have seen my website. I designed my website myself. And I would have never thought I would do that. But once you start doing it, and it took me 3 nights to link the domain name to the domain number given by the authority and to the website. And I was so scared because I'm not a techie. I have no skills. It was just trial and error. And even now, every time I update my website, I'm scared if I click something, it may just go poof and it'll all disappear. But I tell myself that had I not tried, I would have never reached a point I would have learned a new skill. So to me, what drives me is learning new things. I may learn them and not like them. I may learn them and really love them. But that process of exploration is what really drives me and what made me choose to do this in the long run.
Right. So actually, I would urge everyone to see ma'am's website, Samāna Center for Gender Policy and Law. It's really beautiful. You all should check it out.
And if you find any technical glitches, please tell me.
Sure,
I'm a novice. And don't try and hack it, please.
No, ma'am. At least I won't. I can't assure you of the rest. So, like on a completely different note, like I've had the opportunity to work under your guidance, and I think Harshit will agree with me that whenever we used to work for more than 4 or 5 hours in a day, would instantly text us and say that no, you have to stop working now. You have to focus on your life as well. You have to balance your work life. And I've noticed a lot about your behavior and your leadership style. And one thing that I really find very interesting is that you really focus on your work-life balance. You used to guide us, both of us as well, on. So would you like to, in this entire decade, people have started talking a lot about mental health and, the impacts of it. And it's a fact that students at law school become very competitive about all the time. They just feel that the more we work, the more we can add to our CV, it's going to help us. And they totally neglect their mental health. So what do you have to say on that?
Right. So there are a couple of questions that I'll, respond in different ways. So when I joined the profession in 2005, unfortunately, there was no understanding of work-life. There was not much discussion about mental health. You just joined a job and you got on with it. Law per se is an intense practice. Sometimes overnight you have to read 30 cases. The devil is in the detail, as I said. The more you read the detailing, you will understand why courts took a particular view. It's not something you can just take a decision in 2 minutes, right? So per se, it's a profession which requires a lot of usage of your mind. Very, very difficult hours sometimes. To some extent, you can control the hours. But to a great extent, you cannot control the hours, because say your court lists your matter out of the blue after 2 days, and it's a file you haven't read in 6 months, then you have to quickly pull that out, and you can't go to a court without knowing your facts, right? So per se, it's a very intensive profession, and if you want to be better, you have to be detail oriented. You have to be well prepared for your your matter, whether it's a negotiation, whether it's a discussion, whether you're meeting the authority, whether it's a court of law, whatever form it is. I really think that, and those learnings, I have made some mistakes as well, and they have come much later in life, that you have to prioritize your physical and mental health, which is very, very important. Also, I think the pressures, and I'm not just talking about the work pressure, which will be there in any profession. I also think that the peer pressure is very different when I started and what I see around now, and it bothers me. And I actually want to talk to younger lawyers and say that, look, they can be, we are all running a race, but why are you running that race, right? And how many, what will you gain out of running this race in the long run? So, when I joined law school in 2005, I think first month of law school, the moot started. And it was a big thing in law school to moot. It was almost like if you did not moot, something was either wrong with you or you were just not good enough. Yeah. And I somehow could not manage or cope up with the pressure of it, right? I just could not do it. And I remember, talking, thinking about it, that it's very important, what will happen. And I told myself, if you're not able to do it, you will have another chance. You can always try in the next university now. You can try later. So I think what is important is that, of course, it's important to learn. It's important to perform well on whatever criteria the university has put up. But don't be overwhelmed by those criteria, right? I have flunked a fair amount of courses in law school, and it was okay, because more than the fact that I didn't pass a particular course, it taught me that I didn't pass it because I hadn't prepared well enough. So the learnings you take from something that doesn't work out well have to be holistic learnings. And you can't really put yourself in a corner where you are becoming everything that everybody wants you to be. Because you have to be authentic. If you don't like something, you will do it for 2 years, you will do it for 3 years, then you will fizzle out. You will just not enjoy doing it. So follow your passion, find what you really like doing. What you like doing may change in 10 years. Like I moved from a hardcore corporate law practice to development sector. And I still consult companies. It's not like I'm working only in the development sector, because the kind of law I practice is different. But you should have your own reason of why you're doing something. And you should have your own justified pace on why you're doing something at a particular pace. And I'm not saying this to say that you don't try. Try doing whatever you can, but don't let that pressure get you. And mostly because when I interact with students who are now in law firms or in other forms of practice, they are so bothered about the number of hours you clocked in a year. And at some point, you have to tell yourself you're not a machine. If you are performing good work, if your product is of quality, if you are that one person in that office that everybody will come and talk to you on that one point of law that you have researched, those are the good qualities you should have. Because life is not a straight line. There will be external factors. Things change in our surroundings. You can't put yourself and hold yourself up to a standard of quantitative performance. So please always look at qualitative performance. You may do 3 matters, but do them the best. And I used to tell somebody once that even if a client approaches me for a board resolution, I will do it in such a manner that he remembers for the rest of his life that this one girl sitting in India did a good job on that board resolution. So give yourself qualitative targets rather than quantitative targets. And on peer pressure, there will always be pressure. People will always tell you, ye karo, wo mat karo. People will always have it, but you have to do what you believe is the right thing. And you can use those external milestones to guide you, right? That, okay, for example, people become senior advocates. So that can be a goal for you, or that can be okay, after 20 years, that's a good thing to be. But you don't have to really let that pressure get to you that, oh my God, I didn't make senior advocate in 20 years, right? Like law firm partnership. I see so many people saying, oh, I made partner in 6 years, 2 months. I made partner in 5 years, 11 months. And it's a joke. With due respect, you do well, you perform well, be recognized for your core skill. How does it matter whether it's 7 years or 8 years or 9 years? I mean, it should be that when you walk into a room, irrespective of how young you are, when you speak or when you are talking about a point of law, people should stand up and listen and say, this person is making a good point. This person has researched well. This person has brought a perspective. 30 other people could not bring that perspective in that room. So you should gain that respect from your knowledge, from how you conduct yourself, from the kind of thinking you can bring to a transaction or to a piece of advice, not really by the number of billable hours you have clocked or what your designation really. And also, I think just on a joint note, when you are younger in the profession, right? A lot of times when I was younger, you were taken for a meeting. People don't expect youngsters to speak up, right? They assume, and I always used to speak up because if I had an opinion, I would just raise my hand and say, but why can't we do it like this? And that's something I encouraged in the team. And especially I think with Harshit and this team, I was like, if you don't agree with how I'm interpreting something, or you don't even agree with the approach with how I'm researching something, tell me. Because what is refreshing is a different perspective. So you have to find that confidence that, I know what I'm talking about. I have researched. I can make a good case or a good argument or a good proposition out of it. And people should respect you for the value you bring to the table, not these, external validation factors like how many followers do you have on Twitter, how many, billable hours have you clocked, or how much money you're making. And money is important, I'm not underplaying that, but don't let money become your god. You have to really have that focus on, am I the best lawyer for this area? Do I know everything that nobody else knows in this area? Just if you keep that focus, then other things will just fall.
Right. While we move ahead, I'd request everyone that if you have any questions, just put it in the Q&A session so that ma'am can take it up. So I have a last question before we take up other questions as well. So, I'm very fascinated by the idea of LGBT community, and, and you especially, you're actually the right person to answer this because you've worked a lot with them. So whenever you meet them or, whenever you interact with them, what is it that, is there anything that, makes you feel different about it, or something that makes you question your own privileges?
No, absolutely. Tasneem, I was always aware about the LGBT community. I had friends from the LGBT community, but I don't think we understood the extent to which these things become barriers for their own progress in life. And when I started Samāna, I think one of the reasons, and I don't talk about it often, one of the reasons I left a corporate law firm practice, that I was bothered with my own privilege. Because more and more we were living in a bubble. We had no idea what was happening in the world around us. You went into office at 9, you left at 3 in the morning. You went to the best of places to socialize. You had no idea. I found I was getting cut off from reality. And more than anything else, that really bothered me, because I didn't want to become a person who forgot their roots or who did not know how things can be very different for different sections of the society. And when I started interacting more, and I work very closely now with members of the LGBT community, other marginalized sections of society, a lot with transgender people, I come back home many times, not only questioning my privilege, I also question my own reality. When you understand that, it's very cool to talk about equality and how fundamental principles are enshrined in the Constitution, it makes you question reality in a way that, after somebody who's practiced law for so many years, you really uphold the Constitution. And you realize that the word Constitution has meant nothing for people. With due respect, we have good judgments. But when you realize that people have had no education, they have been given no access to employment, there is serious discrimination and day-to-day practice. It really bothers me, because in my head, there is a notion of equality. In my head, there is a notion of, this is my Bible, this is my Constitution. And when I see that reality, it really, really bothers me. And I think more than questioning your own privilege, it gives you that motivation that how can you use the little skills that you have, the little experience that you have, to change somebody's lived experience, right? And I also think that the closer I work with the community, and my work has gone a lot beyond LGBT and gender practice now. Because when we look at marginalization, and I'm going to have a very open conversation, we've talked about this earlier. How are we behaving with people from minority religions? How are we behaving with people who have a different caste background? It's one thing to say we believe in equality. Look at every meme that comes on your WhatsApp. Look at every pejorative or abusive word that you use. Look at every joke that you crack. Why is it always about certain communities? Because if all of you are doing this, we are still perpetuating inequality or discrimination. So it has opened my eyes in many ways that, to be somebody who respects people, to be somebody who believes in an inclusive society, it's not just about the workplaces, it's about our universities, it's about our homes. How do you talk to the person who is the domestic help at home, right? So I think it has brought me a lot more close, and it has given me the voice or the ability now to raise issues in a manner where corporate organizations or universities or other forms of frameworks of organizations can take systemic steps to change this. Because a lot of interventions are not just formal interventions, they have to be cultural interventions as well. Because unless you make people aware about how they are practicing discrimination, we're not going to be able to change. So yes, it has it has helped me come very close to reality in many ways. And it also, as much as it shakes me up many times, it gives me that motivation to say, look, if each one of us can try doing something, we will be able to change the lived experiences and realities of people.
That's right. So on the same line, we have a question from one of our attendees, and he's asking you to talk about, how much of a way the LGBTQ plus community has come in breaking the barriers, and how much of a way it has to go to completely normalize it. Would you like to answer that?
So, right. So I can't, unfortunately, I can't answer this question in percentage terms. But I would like to look at two or three important pivots, right? So if we look at discrimination, and that could be discrimination has many facets, right? You can outwardly discriminate, you can make fun of somebody, you can exclude somebody. So I think if you look at the level of discrimination, I think it's still very high, right? It may come up as a subtle joke somewhere, it may come up as a homophobic comment, or it may come up as not giving somebody a job. But eventually, these are forms of discrimination. I still think that they're very high, and it hasn't reached a point where you can be comfortably out. But I would request everybody who's listening in, who is either from the community or has friends from the community, that we have a very strong legal framework. The Constitution has very clearly given you equal rights, and we have to create the role of allies, people like me and others who are believers, to really create that bridge and allow for equal opportunity and equal respect for everybody from the community. And also to finish that question, when I look at employment, when I look at the top companies in India, whether they're MNCs or promoter-oriented companies, are they all enabling people to be out in the open? A lot of them are not doing. And that's exactly the bridge I, as an ally, am trying to build. That, look at people for the skill they bring to the table. Look at people for what they bring to the table, and their sexual orientation or gender should not matter. So yes, we are very, very far away, especially on civil rights like adoption, ability to marry, etc. There are various restrictions. It's a complex web of legislations, because it's not just about the personal law statutes. Even a statute like gratuity, it only allows you to nominate or not somebody as a nominee who comes from your family, and family is traditionally defined in a very restrictive manner. So there is a lot of work to do, which I'm sure the government is thinking about, and there has been a lot of discussions around these issues. So we are very, very far away, but I think the fact that we have started, and we all have to step up, whether we are from the community or we are allies. We have to step up to create that environment where it is easier for everybody from the community to access safe working places, safe environments, and also equal access to opportunity and benefits wherever you are, whether it's a university, an organization, an NGO, or a government organization. We have to make it easier and more respectable for people.
That's right. So we have on the same line one more question from our faculty. So the question is, the problems within the Transgender Protection Act showcases the barrier between law and gender justice goals with entrenched surveillance on trans bodies. So how do we bridge the barrier?
So absolutely, and I think I'd like to talk about lawmaking. So this is something we saw in college as well. You had a hostel policy. So you either take that policy and you criticize it, or you engage with the person who has made the policy. So I think a lot of times people, with due respect, people who are making policies, people who are making laws, even in spite of their best efforts, because I don't want to make it an unintentional issue. I mean, even in spite of their best efforts, they may not have the full perspective. They may not understand how that law that they're making it impacts people. So I think the first important aspect is communication and dialogue. And in today's world, you have so many forums, from writing your own blog or meeting the authorities. I think you can make cogent arguments on why the law needs to be looked at in many places, right? And engage with the authority in a constructive manner to help them understand the whole spectrum of why this is not going to work out. Also, I think our own expectation from laws also change over time. When the Contract Act came about 100 years ago, the kind of commercial transactions that were happening, a lot of those provisions are not enabling them. So law also works on the bedrock of what we see around us. And law also requires tweaking. So I'm trying to say both things. You may have a problem with the law initially, the way it has been drafted, that itself will be problematic. Or you may have a very good law that is not sufficient anymore to provide for the situation that is around us. Or after 3 or 4 or 10 years of the law being in implementation, you may realize gaps in the law or unintended consequences or mischiefs which you read about in statutory interpretation of the law that come up. So I think that as lawyers, our engagement with lawmakers and in the reform of law, to improvise law, to create new laws, it has to be a continuous exercise. And we cannot other the lawmaker and say they have made it, we don't know how to implement this or there is a problem. You know, that engagement between lawmakers and practicing lawyers is very, very important, because only when you implement law on facts and you implement that, you know, day-to-day issues, will you realize how robust the law is, or how inaccurate, or how, you know, purposeless the law is. In fact, I read there was some repeal of laws project going on. They found some 600 laws which had no usage. Nobody ever used it. But this is exactly the reason why practicing lawyers have to engage with the lawmaker in a constructive manner and give feedback and help the lawmaker understand the full spectrum of issues that come up in legal implementation and iron out those processes.
That's right. I think you're absolutely right here, because as students, we are almost, learning all these things bit by bit. So I think this is going to help us at towards the end. So I think one more question as a student, I would like to ask you that, you worked with as a partner in law firms, and you must have a lot of interns working under you. So, when an intern like us, when a student like us applies for in corporate law internships, which, towards the third, fourth year, people are very fascinated by. So what do corporate law offices, they look in an intern before? What is on my CV that is going to attract you and that's going to make you choose me as an intern over the others?
Right. So couple of things, and I'll come to CV in a bit. So I think I have probably in the past 16 years worked with, I don't know, maybe 500,000 plus or maybe more, younger lawyers, both as associates or, interns. I think the first thing that I really like about a person is the curiosity that they have, right? And their willingness to learn. Because a lot of times, and so couple of things, you have to have that curiosity to understand why is there a problem in front of us and how can we solve that problem that's there. And no amount of bookish reading and no amount of, theoretical knowledge is going to make up for your curiosity and the hustling that you bring to the practice of law, right? So if I find a CV where you have 80 internships, but you are unable to tell me in a conversation that one issue you found fascinating in your research in any one of the internships, I don't think the conversation will go 5 minutes. Because I think I don't expect a youngster to know everything about a particular issue of law. I don't know everything about everything, right? But if you have mentioned in your CV that, say, you researched on leasehold rights and you are unable to even explain to me what a lease is or how a lease is different from a license, how do you expect me to rely on what you have written in your CV? So I think the first thing, again, I say is that quality is more important than quantity. If you can, with your knowledge, engage with somebody and explain to them what that issue was, right? And we're all craving learning. We're all craving to hear new perspectives. You could interpret a particular section of the Transfer of Property Act in a unique manner that nobody has thought of. We as senior professionals, if I may use that word, we crave intellectual thrill. We crave fresh interpretations, right? If you can come up with something unique, if you can argue with me and say, but I don't agree with this because read it like this, it reads completely different. That's what wows me in a person, rather than somebody just willing to compile 600 things in a document and not even be able to tell me after 3 days what was written. And I'll give you another example, and this just shows about, of course, there will be a difference in somebody who's learning the law and somebody who's practiced it. But I got a CV recently from somebody who had graduated and done post-graduation in law, and then LLM, and then I think public policy. And I was very fascinated by a public policy course, so I wanted to know more. I asked that person in the interview the first question that, tell me more about the public policy course. They said, what do you want to know? So I said, tell me, what did they teach you? Because, when somebody talks about a law course, I know you've learned contract law, TP, constitution, criminal law, CRPC. Yeah, I know broadly what you would have covered. I wanted to understand, what do they really teach you in public policy? This person had graduated 6 months ago. They said, I don't remember. So I said, how do you not remember a 2-year course that you have done? Can you tell me just one thing that was taught, or a particular course, and they were not able to tell me? And I think that really, I'm just trying to plug that into the conversation I've had, that what we're looking for is not that 80, 100 topics or 80, 100 issues. We want to know that one issue you have worked on, you can talk about it confidently because you have actually read and understood the proposition that was the problem, or the point of law, or the or what the law today in India on that point is. If you can just do that, I think that is what we're looking for. And I think the other things which are key unique criteria is, of course, hard work. And by hard work, I'm not saying that you burn yourself out, but by hard work, I mean, if something needs to be done, you have to put in the requisite number of hours. And let me assure you, there are no shortcuts in law. You can Google something, you can pull it out from a secondary source. It may get you by that one little problem you're researching. It will not help you accumulate good first-hand information and views in your own mind. So if you have good integrity, there is a willingness to work hard, because you have to work hard in whichever profession you're in. And you have that curiosity to find out, because a lot of times you read something and you think, this is not making sense. Let me find more. Then you go to level 2. Then you may find a bad judgment. But you should have that ability to understand, why is this a bad judgment? Why is this a wrong judgment on a point of law? So I think it just has to be curiosity to say, why is this like this? And what can we do better to find a solution?
You're right. So I think overall, what we need to do as law students, I think what you mean to say is we need to work on those skills that are actually going to help us bring out the essence of law, and help us understand what actually law is and how to interpret it. I think that's
absolutely. And I think just read. So even if you're reading on, say, non-compete under Section 27, it's not just that you have read an article on some portal where somebody has written it. They may not have taken the best interpretation. So you read 27, you read the judgments under 27, you take a sheet of paper and you draw the boxes out that, okay, if somebody is employed here, then he wants to do this. You work through the permutations. You will get a level of clarity that no other book will give you. So there are aids to interpretation, there are commentaries, there are judgments, but you have to be able to know that this is what 27 is. This is the intention of 27. This is how courts have interpreted over the years. But the courts have also interpreted it in limited situations. What if a new situation comes? How can you use those guiding principles to arrive at a new kind of interpretation? So I think if you have that kind of reading, it could be really long judgments, etc. But if you have read them and you have understood the flow, there is nothing like it.
I think this session has been one of the most interactive, one of the most interesting sessions for me, and as well as for my batchmates, I assume. Thank you so much, ma'am. I feel honored to talk to you again. And
please don't over glorify me. I'm more than happy to chat. It's very refreshing for us to engage with younger lawyers, because I also think that the way we practice law is changing quite a lot, with technology and new means of learning, and it's equally interesting for us to chat with younger lawyers. So you're most welcome, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you, ma'am. And also we have attendees as well who are going to join law school. So I think this session would also be very helpful for them to make a right choice to choose their own career paths. So once again, I'd like to thank you from the entire BMU community and from the entire BMU Law School.
Thank you so much. Tasneem. Thank you, Aditya, and thank you to Professor Nigam. I don't know if he's attending, but thank you once again for engaging.